Welcome back, everybody. It's Tom Christie back in the carving shop for session 3 of carving a Drake bluebill. This is a Greater Scaup Drake. We've got the head shaped up. If you haven't seen the previous sessions, 1 and 2, we got the head carved, the body roughed out. And in this session, session 3, we're going to add some body details. I want to pull a wing out on this side, so we'll talk about how to do that, how to carve it. And same thing over here. I've got a little speculum out on this side. Make this in kind of a preening position. It's just going to be a beautiful bird, I hope. So if you're enjoying my channel and getting value out of it, please hit the subscribe button. That helps me out, and it's totally free. Let's get going. These preening and wing out positions can definitely be more complicated, so it may not be a first project for a new carver. But what I've done here is done some preliminary layout work using my reference to see how far the tertials come back in relationship to the primaries. Got that located, this tertial located, and the scapulars located, so kind of where they overlap the tertials here. And then I've dropped the speculum, and in order to show more of the speculum, the original side pocket, kind of in its normal position, is going to be up in this area. I'm dropping a section of side pocket feathers down here, and we're going to want to carve those in place so that I can pull the speculum over these larger side pocket feathers and overlap them. And then I've got my original pencil lines of how far the side pocket dips down, but up here I'm going to pull out a little bit of the front of the wing, and I checked a reference dimension on the length of a wing of a Greater Scaup, and that helped me position that. On this side, very similar fashion, I'm going to drop the side pocket group of feathers here. This is the side pocket underneath that wing structure, and the speculum here. So a lot going on, and then the cape is located here. A lot going on. I'm just going to jump into the carving, and I'm not going to try to carve every one of these details. I'll probably carve groups of feathers, like a primary group, this tertial and secondary group, the scapulars group, and then the wing itself coming out of this group of feathers in the side pocket. Let's get going on the carving. All right, I'm going to start with this 3/4 inch cylindrical saber-tooth burr. It's fine tooth. That yellow in color designates fine. I'm going to start at the front here, and although you can't see it very well, I'm digging in along that side pocket and defining the top edge of the side pocket. And we'll see it a little better here in a minute. So I'm just taking multiple passes on that. There you can see it, to create a little bit of a side pocket structure. And now I'll go from the top down in a similar fashion to meet up with the line that I put in place from our top-down pattern. And then I'm going to start rounding the scapular area. Now I'm going to dig in and start to go up here towards the cape. And kind of define the back edge of the cape and put a little concaved area here in the center line of the back. And then go ahead and make sure everything is nice and rounded. And once I have those deep enough, I'm going to round the side pocket area. This is actually just a portion of the side pocket. Like we talked about during the layout, there's going to be some speculum showing, and it's tucking into this outer portion of the side pocket. So I want a little undercut here to create some shadow under that feather group. So I'm not digging these in real deep, but we need enough depth here to be able to round these feathers and make it look like a nice soft group of side pocket feathers overlapping the speculum in that area. So I wanted to start this video out with normal speed so you get a feel for the speed that I'm carving. I am going to go to 2 times speed because there's a lot of video here and there's a lot of sculpting going on, so I'll try to narrate as we go, but I think at 2 times speed we'll be able to get through the material a lot quicker. Just be aware that it's 2 times. All right, this is the faster speed. So I'm just rounding things in general now that I have that kind of side pocket feather group defined. Now I'm cutting under the primary group of feathers here and the secondaries that go down into the side pocket. And then I'm rounding that rump area. We're going to create feather groups here. Not try to carve a bunch of individual feathers, at least on this particular carving. That's what I want to do. Let's go to the other side, same process here. I'm going to start by digging in at the front and taking that side pocket group of feathers down to the appropriate elevation. But there's a wing out on this side, so we need to be more cautious on this side, not remove too much wood too fast. So I'm beginning to define that small group of side pocket feathers that is the wing is tucked behind. And now that's the edge of the rear of the side pocket back there. I'm cutting in under the secondaries there to define where they tuck into the side pocket. Now I'm kind of defining the front of the wing there as it tucks under the scapulars and is protruding out the side here. Now I'm rounding that group of side pocket feathers. You can see I kind of go all over the place when I'm carving, so it's kind of hard to narrate, but I work pretty quickly. And I just defined the cape there. The cape is a group of feathers that overlap the scapulars in back, so I like to leave them raised a little bit. Now I'm going to round these scapulars. You can see the wing starting to shape up there and emerge from the wood. So I'm defining the front edge of the wing there, and then those side pocket feathers overlap the wing. So the wing is tucked into the side pocket, but the speculum is going to be showing when we're done. I'm rounding the scapulars again, cutting that in a little deeper so we have a little more definition. That wing tucks in under those scapulars, so the angle of the wing tucking under there needs to be realistic. I'm going to hold for now. We'll take a look at where we are. I'm going to change bits, go to the smaller 1/4 inch cylindrical burr, and I have a little bit more control. I want to begin to define where these scapulars come and overlap the tertial area. And I'm going to begin that by outlining them and then lowering the tertial area a bit so it looks like the scapulars are overlapping them. Not a particularly good view here, I apologize for that. I'm working at defining that, further refining the area where the tertials now come back and overlap the primaries and create a feather group out of the tertials there and the primaries. Now I'm going to use this smaller burr to really begin to define things and clean up things as we go. You got more control with a smaller burr like this, so I'm able to get into tighter spots. I'm refining the front edge of the wing there, and then creating a little bit of a undercut there under that portion of the wing as it overhangs the side pocket. And then these are those feathers that wrap up and over the wing. So I'm rounding the lower edge of the wing there and shaping the wing up. You can see it's pretty tightly tucked against the body. And I'm going to have the head, I believe, in a preening position, so that'll kind of convey that the wing is out for some preening being done by the bird. I'm rounding that side pocket feather group, just further refining that group so it looks nice and soft, overlapping the wing. Kind of refining the back edge of the side pocket and doing a little bit more undercutting of this feather group so that a little bit of a shadow gets cast under that group, like it's bulging out a bit. I'm using the end of that cylindrical burr, like an end mill, to take material out of the wing area and take it down to a little bit of a lower level. Just removing material there. I'm going to speed the video up here. This has been real-time speed on this smaller burr, but I'll speed it up now. Okay, now we're at 2 times speed. I'm working with that burr. I do a lot of sculpting with this 1/4 inch burr, as you can see. Just to remove wood, and we'll have to go to smaller and more refined ruby bits to really clean everything up, remove all the burr lines, but this makes pretty quick work of the sculpting. I'm defining the edges of those scapulars and then taking those tertials down a bit, like we did on the other side. I don't want much between the scapulars and the tertials, just kind of a bump line. It'll help me when I'm painting and give it a little bit of structure. Now I'm working that other side pocket. You can see on this side the wing is not fully out, but the side pocket is dropped down so that we've got some speculum out on that side as well. So things are shaping up. That's looking better. Just cleaning up things in general. I'm working that cape to make it nice and soft. You can see that wing now is starting to look like something. Now I'm going to use the ruby kind of bullet shaped bit and just use it kind of like a rough sander, but also refine the shapes. You can see I'm using the side of that ruby bit to basically do a lot of removal of the burr lines and any heavy grinding lines. And that'll save a lot of time when we move to the actual sanding. But this is kind of the next level down now of sculpting the bird with this ruby bit. Cleaning things up, making things make sense, getting my shapes right, refining the whole carving. Cleaning up that area where the underneath the primaries. So I'll do that over the entire bird. Once I've done that with the ruby bit, I switch to the 1/2 inch sanding bit, 150 grit paper, and I'm just going to use this to remove more burr lines, smooth everything out, and continue to sculpt the body with this. But now we're getting to a more refined level of smoothness with this sanding drum. And I'm not going to show too much of this because it's going to get pretty boring to watch me go around the entire bird with this sanding drum. But just know that I spend a significant amount of time cleaning things up with the sanding drum and then hand sanding when we're done with that. Okay, I've jumped ahead. We're further along. You can see the body's starting to shape up. I'll do that over the entire bird. All right, I've got everything rough sanded with the drum sander. Now I just have a lot of hand sanding to do, and just made some quick checks on my pattern, and everything looks pretty decent. So I'm going to hand sand, then I'll be back. We'll split the body and hollow it out for flotation. All right, I've got the body sanded, and now I want to split the bird, and I've given myself a guideline here. I'm going to keep the bottom board pretty thin. Just a word of caution when you're splitting a large rounded piece like this on a bandsaw, I like to use a block, and you can see I'm squeezing the body to the block, keeping my hands away from the blade, going slow, and using the block to keep my squareness by just keeping the bottom of the decoy pressed against that block and slowly cutting my way through the decoy body. You can see I'm kind of rotating the body, but you have to go slow, and this can be a tricky cut, so just be careful. Okay, split. I did keep the scrap piece from when I bandsawed the block out, and that makes a nice nest for this hollowing process. I'm going to target about 1/2 inch. use the Forstner bits on the drill press to hollow out the bird. I'm going to start with a 1-inch Forstner bit, and just a word of caution on hollowing a decoy out like this. You have to keep your hands away from that Forstner. That's a nasty bit, and at times it'll tend to snag and pull a little bit. So you want your hands completely away from that. I'm going to start by doing a complete perimeter with the 1-inch. And I'm going to go down, and I use my eyeballs and experience to know how deep to go. We don't want to punch through, obviously, and really have to be careful in areas like this where it's pretty thin. If I go too deep, I'm going to punch through there. So I'm going to start with a perimeter circle and then move in about 1 inch and start going deeper and step down until I get about a 1/2 inch of clearance down here. So I'll show a little bit of that, and then we'll come back. I'll show you some progress shots. First round is complete. Now I'm going to move in and step down, and I can go a little deeper. Second row is complete. Now I'm going to go further in. Now that I have a lot of wood out of the way, I can use a larger Forstner. This is 1.5 inches, and I'm going to angle that and also use it just to peel out a little bit more. Now that I have wood removed, I have a better feel for where I'm still thick and where I'm getting really thin. So I'll start with some angles on this. Another word of caution, this bigger Forstner is even worse about snagging or grabbing and jerking, so you got to keep your hands away from the bit. Got it cleaned out pretty well with those angled cuts, and now I'm just going back, and I've got a little wood there I can take out. I don't want this to be eggshell thin. I want it to be strong. So we'll just finish up here. that's going to be good. Now I'm just taking some 80 grit sandpaper and just quickly knocking off anything that's loose so it's not rattling around inside the decoy. You may want that. I just prefer it be nice and clean inside. And there's normally some loose pieces hanging off of the Forstner operation there. All right, before I glue the body halves together, I want to put some reinforcing blocks inside. So I've got some 1/4 3/8 inch oak, and I've already drilled my screw holes so I know where they're located here. So I'm going to put these blocks right over those holes, and this will give me something to bite into when I mount the keel, rather than just a 1/2 inch of tupelo on the bottom. That'll give it something to really anchor to, hold that keel on nice and tight. So I'm just putting the blocks centered over where I know the keel screw holes need to be. Make sure there's plenty of glue on there. That should be good. I'll let that set, and then we can put the body halves together. When you glue body halves together with that glue joint, there's a tendency for the pieces to slide around. So I like to put some brads in the lower section and snip the heads off. And these become locating pegs. If I can get the job done here. And before I glue, I'll press the body halves together in the proper orientation. And then when I glue, these pegs will help hold everything in alignment. Now I'm just lining up the body halves and pressing that in place. That looks pretty good. Minor side to side adjustment. Now we'll be ready to, so those have pinned into the top, and now we'll be ready to glue. All right, I've got my DevCon 2-part epoxy mixed up, and I'm going to spread that on both halves, just in this outer 1/2 inch where the body sections meet up. Make sure I have glue around those pins. I think they also add a little strength to the seam. I want to make sure all the surface is coated so there are no dry spots that might leave a gap. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing with the top section, and then we'll put them together. Okay. Now hopefully my registration pegs will help us get this located. Gotta find them. There we go. I'm going to use electrician's tape. You could use big rubber bands or something to keep pressure on the joint. And then I've got some paper towel, and I just want to wipe off the excess so that I don't have to grind it off later. It's already setting up, so we got to work fast. Okay. And then just to help with the compression, I have a coffee can of lead weights. Not very sophisticated, but that puts additional downward pressure until things set up. All right, well, that's a wrap on session 3. I'm going to let that epoxy set overnight. And then in session 4, we'll deal with the body seam. We'll get the head mounted, get the keel made, and get some flotation done. Until next time, I've got some cleanup to do. It's Tom Christie sweeping and signing out.